Hi everyone, I'm Priya and welcome to our first episode of Careeroscope. And today we'll be chatting with Tushar Dayal, who is a director and a systems engineer at the BBC, and he is joining us today from Washington, D.C. Hi Tushar.
Hello.
And also joining us, we have four journalism students from Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa.
Hi, my name is Ankita. I am a senior and I'm majoring in radio, TV producing, and sociology.
Hi, I'm Joni Berry. I'm a radio, television, and secondary education major with English and journalism endorsements, and I am a junior.
Hi, my name is Kathy Wiseman. I'm a radio, TV production major, and I'm a senior.
My name is Tad Unruh, and I am a radio, TV production major and a sociology major.
So maybe just start out with Tushar. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do at the BBC?
BBC Washington is one of the larger foreign bureaus for the BBC, but on the scale of, like, if you were to compare it to other American broadcasters, we would be considered very small. Being a small bureau, we get to do a lot of things, whereas like if I were in London, it would be very specialized. I have two main jobs. I'm a bureau engineer, so I deal with all like technology and computers and servers and broadcast equipment, whatever, anything that has wires in it, and sometimes more than that. And then also I helped direct a program called BBC World News America. That was kind of a secondary thing that I got into.
So can you tell us a little bit about the process that you go through when preparing for a show?
As a director, my duties tend to come up later in the day. There's 3 producers in Washington and 1 producer in London. We spend the whole day writing scripts. I don't really write the scripts. I end up watching the scripts, and I sort of keep an idea about like what's going on, what kind of like the general trend of the show is. Like, are we starting with serious topics? Are we starting with more happy topics? In general, we start with more serious topics. And then I do things like I prepare graphics. I talk to the graphics departments in London to see like if they've already made graphics for stories. If not, I'll try to come up with something myself. And then we start like if we have guests coming from, we call them down the lines. One caveat is that I work for the British, and they have different terminology than Americans. They call them down the lines. They're satellite interviews, or from another studio. I will help book the lines for that, make sure that we get the signal and everything, and then we establish communications with London and do all the technical stuff to get ready for a show.
I think you mentioned producers you work with. Like, what are some of the different types of people in general that you would work with on a show?
We have one executive producer. She's in charge. She has 2 producers with her that write the scripts. They book guests and things like that. And then I normally deal with her, the lead producer, and I sort of I'll talk with her during the day to make sure, how many guests we have, and, if I need to, like, set up certain special, like, camera setups for, like, if she wants to do, like, more than one guest. Our studio is very small, so I have to then talk with her and discuss, like, what's going to happen in the show, what camera angles to use, and all that kind of stuff. I also talk to producers in London, make sure they have, like, if we're making packages in Washington, make sure they have them there in London, make sure they, come in the right aspect ratio, come in like with all the right qualities, and because we transfer a lot of material back and forth, and so quality is a very specific issue that we need to deal with.
So let's maybe switch gears to your engineering job, which you also do. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that.
Since I moved into this directing position, I tend to do less IT for the average person, and I do more like long-term projects. I also get sent out a lot to like big events. So like both the Democratic and Republican conventions, I went to those, and I brought along like video servers and broadcast equipment with me, and there was maybe 20, 30 people from the BBC that came with me, and I was supporting all of them, and they would feed in material to the server, and I would make sure I was also kind of a media manager
So it sounds like the engineering job is pretty technical. Like what types of tools or technologies are you using or are you relying on?
What's cool about the BBC is that there's this DIY kind of R&D culture about it. So a lot of our technologies are sort of built in-house. Like we have, like I was talking about, the portable servers that I take to events and things like that are actually all, like, the software is designed in-house. A lot of it is like Linux-based, open source stuff that we have just customized for our own use. Yeah, I deal with cameras, monitors. We rack cameras, make sure all the lights work. We do a lot of electrical testing. It's a lot of work, but yeah, it's fun.
It seems like journalism as a field has evolved a lot because of technology. What would you say, for aspiring journalists, like what does that mean in terms of, what's required from them on the job?
You need technical skills to be able to, like, be a viable candidate to be hired. I mean, like, more and more these days, like, if companies could, they'd send you and you alone, like, to a story. Like they'd rather not send you and a producer and a cameraman and maybe a set truck. They'd like to just send you with a camera and maybe like an audio recorder. So you need to know things like basic camera work, like basic 3-point lighting or 2-point lighting, how audio works, how basic video editing works, how to maybe like transfer files over the internet, using like FTP or Dropbox.
Just curious, when you're directing, do you also have to technical direct as well, or is it just your calling for things?
It is. I also have to TD as well. Yeah, I have to technical direct. It depends. Like sometimes when we have big events, then we will have they'll hire on like a freelance crew to help us. Like for the elections, things like that, I had a crew, but in general, it's basically like 2 or 3 of us that are doing all the TDing, the sound, the lighting, stage management.
Do you think that has an effect on the way you work if you are definitely with just a specific amount of people rather than having to do one specific thing every single day? Because it obviously gets harder and there's probably more chance for mistakes. How do you keep on top of it?
It tends to be, yeah, I mean, it definitely does affect the way we work. We tend to do a simpler show. We try not to do anything fancy. One, because we don't really have like the studio capability to do it, but also just because, yeah, I don't have like a stage manager on stage at all times to like move a camera or, do like fix a light or something.
Do you have a preference for which of your 2 roles, either directing or kind of more the technical side of IT, engineering, whatnot?
Yeah, I guess I like to do directing more. I don't get to do it as much as I'd like. I think that it's funner to create it's fun to create a show. I don't get to be as creative as an engineer. Like, I mean, sometimes I do get projects where I get to like design my own systems, and like one of my projects was to design a computer to control, like we have 7 plasmas. I control like the 7 plasmas in the background of the studio, and I designed a computer for that, which was those rare moments where I get to like create something. But with a show, I get to, every day I get to create a show. I get to like put graphics. Those decisions are all mine, and I think that's fun. And at the same time, it's really, really scary when you realize like BBC World goes out to potentially like hundreds of millions of homes throughout the world.
In terms of directing, like what types of skills would you say or qualities are important to have in that role?
I think, the most important one is to stay calm. Things go crazy, and luckily this, for the most part, the audience will never see it. But yeah, I think staying calm, being aware is really important, because at least in our control room, the Brits call it a gallery. In our gallery, we have like, I'll have 2 producers sitting behind me, possibly 3. Then I'll have a talk box where I can talk to the producer in London, and then I have another button to talk to a director in London, and then I also have another button to talk to the presenter or the anchor. And then there's also a teleprompter, and then there's also like the person running sound and lighting. So I have to keep an open ear to all of these things going on. Like if someone's having a problem, I need to know. If they start changing the scripts, I also need to be like listening to them talking about that. And also I need to watch the scripts changing on the screen, because those kind of changes will then cascade throughout the rest of the show. And then I'll have to change a lot of like, I'll spend a whole day preparing like my camera angles, and then they'll just all get thrown out really quickly. So yeah, it's funny because all the individual parts are really easy. You know, like cutting cameras is that's the only thing you're doing, it's easy. Or you know, when you're doing teleprompting, it's easy. But like, you know, when they all come together, it gets really intense, and really, you know, you have like 10 seconds to do something, or you know, things go wrong and you have to make a decision.
Where do you think news journalism and news production is going, since more things are going to the internet?
Yeah, I think it's just that. I think they're going to the internet. Like for example, like the show that I work for, World News America, used to, you know, 3 years ago when I first started there, World News America was the golden boy. They were like you know, they had all the money, you know, they had all the crew, and slowly over the past 3 years, it's dwindled, and all that sort of has been funneled into BBC Online. And now like there's a full-fledged BBC Online team in the United States, when this is the first time that they've had their own separate team. So yeah, I think you need to know how, you know, social networking works. They're really into Twitter these days. At the same time, like I think the fundamentals are still the same. Like you still have to present a story. You still have to like tell someone else's story in a hopefully objective manner. So I think that like when some people kind of lament the loss of like television or the loss of radio as broadcasting mediums, and I think they're still there, and I think they'll always still have like maybe not always, but I think if they still have long, illustrious careers. But I think that like those core mechanics of journalism still completely fit the online world.
How do you utilize freelancers, and how do they fit into BBC?
Yeah, we definitely use a lot of freelancers, especially like in countries that we don't have that big of a presence. We tend to have like stringers and freelancers. Actually, more and more we're having freelancers. And so there's like a small, like in our bureau, for example, we have like a small set of core like actual employees, and then we sort of bring on freelancers as we need. So like last week, there was so much news about Boston and then Texas that we like all of the familiar faces of freelancers from the area just started pouring in and filling out shifts, and you know, doing camera work and doing radio producing. And yeah, so it tends to be per event that we sort of scale back or move forward with more and more people. But yeah,
how do you, when they do come in, how do you coordinate with them, and how do you know who's covering what story, who's covering what job, and every single thing that would go on with probably a chaotic situation that would happen there?
Yeah, so we have what we call, it's like the news and planning desk. There's this like central desk in the Washington Bureau. It's this like long desk with tons of monitors, and like they can watch everything, and they can record everything that's going on. And it's a lot of like over email, and a lot of like a couple of 2-3 people will do like all that logistic work about like planning like shifts and things like that.
I guess most of us are looking for jobs soon and graduating soon. So how have you kind of seen your college education play a role in your responsibilities at BBC?
In my specific case, to be honest, like I studied journalism, and journalism as communication with an emphasis on science communication, which I don't really do. But it ended up being like my extracurricular activities that were the most useful. Like I ran a lot of I did a lot of sound for like a local music venue, and then I also like was also just a personal nerd. I used to mess around with computers all the time, and I I did photography for the local like for Iowa State Daily and Uhuru Magazine, and so those things tended to become like more important to my career than necessarily than my classes did. But I think they're both important.
Thank you guys for participating.
It was fun meeting you.
Thank you.
Thank you.